make this a non-negotiable. Like, why aren't we paying for it? Why is it even a conversation? If we think a little boy or girl needs a service, why aren't we giving it to them? It's so much easier to help a child with an issue than it is to try to fix a broken adult.
Are you curious about discovering ways of making your life better? Then welcome to my podcast. I'm Bob Nickman, and this is The Exploding Human. Listen in while I talk with all kinds of people in the fields of personal growth, health and healing, alternative therapies, psychology, spirituality, environment, and the future. I'm looking for those answers that make life better for everyone. You'll meet cutting-edge practitioners, doctors, artists, filmmakers, business people, and those who have overcome challenges. The brave, the curious, anyone who's out there helping us humans to explore, expand, and explode.
Hey, welcome to The Exploding Human. My name is Bob Nickman. My guest today is Paula Yost, and we're going to be talking about her work as an advocate for children with special needs and children in foster care. In addition to being a licensed clinical mental health clinician, she is also an attorney, which gives her a rare blend of legal expertise and an empathetic therapeutic approach. We're also going to be talking about her new book, Tumbleweeds: How to be an advocate for your children and yourself in a failing system. And on a personal level, Paula is going to talk about being a mother of children with medical challenges and how she advocated for them and navigated a very challenging system. So let's jump in. This is Paula Yost. Good afternoon, Paula. It's so great to meet you. I was very excited about this episode because I don't know people, I haven't had a lot of people on the show with who are lawyers and mental health clinicians or experts. And so it's an interesting combination of things that you do. And I was very intrigued. And plus, I want to find out more about your own personal story. So thank you for being here.
Sure. Thank you for having me, Bob.
Did you get into the mental health and the advocacy for special needs children in particular because of your own children? Because I read something in the bio that you had some issues and you were, I guess you were a lawyer first.
I was. So I graduated from college in 2002. So my fall semester of college was the year 9/11 happened and the job market nationally crashed for no 22-year-old was getting a job that year. And so I went to law school. And when I went to law school, it was quickly apparent to me that I did not have the personality type of many of my classmates. In fact, they gave us the Myers-Briggs personality test, and 90% of my classmates all had the same personality type, and I do not. I was off. And I was like, well, I've worked hard to get here. I'm academically capable of doing this, so I'm going to stay. So I got my JD, but then when I went to work, I was very unsatisfied because so often the law, I went to law school because I really wanted to help people. I didn't do it because I wanted to get filthy rich. I really wanted to be helpful and some sort of a social asset. And so the law will only help you help people, but so far. I mean, the law has its limitations on what you can do. And so I found that frustrating. And while I was in law school, I had also worked as a court-appointed special advocate. So I was appointed by the court to represent foster children in care and be a voice for traumatized children who had been living in poverty. And that was what I really, really enjoyed. So a lot of child advocacy isn't just about disabilities. It can be, but it's also about children who are trauma victims. So I got really good at that. And then I actually had a child. My oldest biological child was born with a complete cleft lip and palate. Mm-hmm. And so I had to do some advocacy to try to get him the services and the speech therapy and the reading assistance and the things that he needed to be a successful, little boy.
So you're navigating a system that has a lot of pieces to it, probably with a lot of people that aren't, well, I don't want to say that they're incompetent, but they're probably not as competent as they could be, or maybe that they're in a job that doesn't really suit them and their hands are tied by the bureaucracy. There's so many pieces to having to navigate things where you're trying to get help for people. It seems like that part of our society is very lacking in its abilities to help people in the way that they should be helped, whereas the parts that have more money behind it seem to fire on all cylinders a little bit more.
Well, what I really think happens is that we've lost our why. That's really what I think it is. Like at the end of the day, we like to talk about how family is the most important thing, and it is. But then we also lose sight of things like, what is our most valuable resource? Well, it is our children. It is our nation's children. And so you save so much money. Like a pipeline to prison absolutely does exist.
Yeah.
It exists in children who don't get adequate education or who don't get adequate medical care. Like if you fundamentally feel like you're stupid, not because you are stupid, but just because you didn't get the dyslexia treatment that you needed as a second grader, that impacts your whole life and it impacts your learning potential. And so if we would give children the things that they need as, that 0 to 5 range, OT, PT, speech therapy, if we would really focus on giving that population the care that they need and just make this a non-negotiable, like, why aren't we paying for it? Why is it even a conversation? If we think a little boy or girl needs a service, why aren't we giving it to them? It's so much easier to help a child with an issue than it is to try to fix a broken adult.
It's shocking that more people don't see that. And I don't know how you look at a kid with any kind of issue and say, well, I don't really want to spend the money on that, or like,
Right.
how do you not want to help that kid? It's just so obvious to me that when you see that, this is something that can actually be helped, especially when you think about how resilient a child's mind is and how malleable and how the ability to change things in the younger you are, the easier it is to do it.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. And yet we don't. And that was one of the things that I found the most shocking to me when I started having to attend school IEP and 504 meetings for children. So my daughter is 31. She is legally adopted. I was her child advocate, and then I kept her after she aged out of the system because I couldn't. My daughter is very, very pretty. She's a very, very pretty girl. And I knew that if she didn't have someone, a stable adult, to help her, she was going to wind up having a bad outcome. She was going to wind up like a Jeffrey Epstein victim. And I just couldn't have that. That's how so many of our sex workers and human trafficking victims occur, is we don't always see what they're running from. In many cases, I see children who have been sexually molested by their own parents. So when they meet someone like Jeffrey Epstein, whatever, now they're getting paid for what they've already been doing by someone who's supposed to protect and love them. And I couldn't live with myself letting her have that type of a fate. And so I told my husband we were not going to allow that. So we adopted her. But when she was younger, when she was 14, she had been profoundly educationally neglected. She was the age of a ninth grader, but she was in the seventh grade. And it was not a good fit for her or for the school. The other girls didn't like her. She didn't like them. It just wasn't a good environment at all. And I went to an IEP meeting where we were trying to figure out what can we do to get her, into high school or get her into a non-traditional school, or what can we do to help her thrive?
Can you explain what IEP means?
Yes, an IEP is an individualized education plan. So if you are a child who has autism, dyslexia, a profound speech impediment, you're blind, you're deaf, you have been a trauma victim, and you have some behaviors that make a traditional school environment difficult for you, you have ADHD, you are legally entitled to an IEP. It is actually a legal document that follows you all the way through school. So, there are people who have ADHD or dyslexia who need extra time on the medical boards or the bar exam as doctors and lawyers. These documents are critical because they follow you all the way through.
And this is accessible to anyone that may have a child who has some issues, that they can get extra help.
Correct. So I was in a meeting for my daughter, and there was a teacher who said, well, you just need to get her a GED. She's never going to finish high school.
Yeah, nice person, huh?
And I remember just losing it. I
Good
mean,
for you.
I remember saying something like, how can you say that? Like, we've given this girl an IQ test. She doesn't have a low IQ. She can read, she can write. She's been in a horrible home environment. And we don't know what she's capable of. No one has given her an opportunity to try. We don't know what she can do. And so we wound up moving Tanya to a high school where she entered as a ninth grader. She was in all remedial classes, but she ultimately did graduate from high school on time with a high school diploma. She went to college. She has a degree from the University of North Carolina at Charlotte, and she has a decent, respectable job for a 31-year-old. We can't write people off because they're living in poverty or they've had trauma. And then I had similar experiences with my own son where they were like, well, your son's IQ's high. He doesn't need speech therapy. I'm like, his high IQ doesn't make up for the fact that he was born without a roof in his mouth. He has half of his nose missing. Like, he needs to have speech therapy. We're going to get to work on this. So I think what I would say to your parents who are listening is, if you go into an IEP meeting and you're hearing things like this, I wish I could tell you to be surprised or that I would be surprised, but I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised at some of the things that professionals say about children when they really shouldn't. And that's not every professional. Like, if you go to your child's IEP meeting and it's wonderful and you get the outcome you want, that's great.
Yeah.
But if you're not, then please feel empowered to speak up and to ask and to inquire a little bit more, because some of the time failure to do that really does hurt your child. Another thing that I've seen too is the school meeting where you have an IEP and then all of a sudden somebody from the school calls and says, hey, yeah, your kid's doing great, so we're going to drop them down. We're going to take some services away because they're doing really good. Well, that sounds like exactly what mom and dad want to hear, is that my child's doing great. And that's wonderful if it's true. If it's true, that's wonderful. But I've seen circumstances where it's not true. And also where, again, this is a legal document that can follow your child all the way through their life. So if you've got a child that needs extra time because of ADHD or dyslexia or dysgraphia, and now somebody's taking a service away, they can't just do that to you. That requires a follow-up IEP meeting. You as mom and dad are always entitled to a follow-up meeting.
Well, there's two things there. If they say that they're doing well, we're going to drop the service. That's to save money, I guess, or there's some sort of laziness on their part. But my answer to that would be, well, they weren't doing well. Now they're getting this service and they're doing well. That's the reason to keep doing it, isn't it?
In many cases, it is. And, I have never really been able to figure out why I see this. Because at the end of the day, people who become educators or social workers, they're supposed to care. I can't believe that anyone would go to the trouble of getting a college degree and accepting, especially where I live in North Carolina, our teachers do not get paid well at all. But you obviously stick in this career path because you do care. I would assume that you do care. You have to care. So then what is the motivation behind some of that? I don't think it's the teachers or the educators. I think it's pressure from administration.
That's what I think too. I'm almost sure that's what it is. Because when you were talking, I'm like, you're right. The teachers do care.
Right.
And I've seen that, I've seen individual teachers that my kids have had. They're great people, really care.
Right. And they're wonderful. It's not them. It's almost kind of like the administrator who runs the hospital who's never practiced medicine a day in his life, but he's concerned about his budget. So he's telling everyone else what to do.
I was just going to say that. I was just going to say that because, my own primary care doctor told me, he goes, this network is run by MBAs. There's no doctors up at the top.
Yep.
I'm like, what?
Yep.
Yeah, they got some people, but they're really business people. And that's what this is about. And he goes, I got to tell you, if I get out of the profession, it's not because I don't love what I do. It's because of that bureaucracy stuff that's wrecking the whole system. And for what? I mean, it's just silly.
Right. Why? Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And I'm always sort of touched and intrigued at the same time by people who come into life and they have to start farther back than other people. And some people start really far back. They're born into a situation where they really don't have a shot unless they get some kind of help that isn't within the family or upbringing that they're subjected to. I'm going to use the word subjected because some kids come in and they're subjected to some really serious stuff.
Yes.
From I mean, obviously poverty's, and then you have the different types of trauma, and then you have the attitudes of society towards them, like somehow that's their fault.
Yes.
They're less because they have these situations, and it's really a lack of compassion and understanding.
Yeah, there's a lot of stigma that goes into these children. And again, I've seen kids who, when they moved into their foster home, it was the first time they'd ever had a bed.
Oh.
Because
they
just didn't have beds in their home. They slept in the floor. And they were hoping they could sleep in the floor and there weren't a rodent or an insect infestation. My daughter once came downstairs and she looked real weird. And she was like, "Hey, Paula." And I was like, "Yeah, what's up?" And she was like, "I'm out of toilet paper." And I was like, "Oh, okay, whatever." So I go to the craft closet and pull down a big, 24 pack of Charmin and hand it to her. And I'm like, "There you go." And she, again, looks very weird. And I was like, "What's up?" And she goes, "I've never lived anywhere where we had consistent access to toilet paper." Yeah. And I was like, "What do you mean?" She said, "Well, in my home, we would run out of food stamps, or my mom would sell the food stamps for something she shouldn't have. Yeah. And we didn't have toilet paper, so we had to use rags." And I'm like, that is how children in the United States are living. In my county right now, I live in a community that has 250,000 people in it. We have 200 children in foster care. And all of those children had some element of something that I just described going on in their life, or they were being sexually abused by a family member. We really do have to give people in those scenarios a lot of space and grace. And I'm not saying it's easy. It's easier if the child that you're working with is, little, if you've got an infant. But if you've got a teenager, my daughter was a mess. She was a runner. She would spit in social workers' faces. She was a mess, but she was also a survivor. And that's what she was doing. She was trying to survive.
Yeah.
And honestly, I'm so proud of her. I think she has been able to overcome more crap in her life than anyone I have ever met. And, you just have to be patient with these kids. I tell foster parents all the time, it's one thing if they're hurting you or if they're physically hurting you or damaging your property. But if they're just having a verbal meltdown, let them do it. Walk away. Let them calm down. And then come back an hour later and say something like, "I've made you dinner. I cleaned your laundry. Here is a clean towel." Because over time, they will learn that they can trust you and that you're also offering them an element of unconditional love, which no one else ever has.
Patience is a huge thing with people, anybody that's got troubles. It's a really hard thing to do because you just want to scream back or just say, "Get it together," and here's the facts. But they're not in facts in those moments. It's all emotion. It's all reactivity. It's all, like you say, survival. Here's the thing about people that I've sort of learned is that nobody does anything unless they're getting something out of it. And so what is a person who's reacting the way you're talking about? What are they getting out of it? Well, they're getting a survival instinct activated. They're a cornered animal in those moments, whether it's real or imagined. It's real to them on a trauma level. And so you're dealing with a cornered animal who's terrified and is clawing its way to survive.
You have to recognize that that's what they're doing.
Right. But if you don't come from that, it seems like this person's crazy.
That's right. That's exactly what it seems like.
And if you're basing your assessment of it on your own upbringing, that's missing a piece, which, I don't know if I could do it. Maybe I could, with some patience. My kids who don't have those issues, drove me crazy a lot of times just because they're kids. I mean, you have that plus the fact that they're kids.
That's right.
Brain development is brain development and age development. I mean, that's all real stuff. And, it's like, I remember somebody saying, to my wife, she got into it with my kid at one point about something, and it was just like a lot of, and the person said, your son makes a better 3-year-old than you do. He's gonna win every time if you start acting like a 3-year-old. Yeah. Oh yeah, I didn't think of that. So I mean is there enough? I know the answer is no, but is there enough people to accommodate those 200? How many kids are in the situation?
About 200 are in foster care.
200 kids out of a population of almost 200,000 or a little over. So what is that, 1% or something? It's
something like that.
Yeah,
so I don't think that they're. So let me also talk about the difference in a really quality foster home and not so much, right? So Tanya was in more than one. And one of the foster families in her circumstance that I really, really liked and appreciated the most was a mom and a dad who had younger kids. And the mom had a background in caring for people with special needs. And these people were salt of the earth. And they were patient with her. They worked with her. They did all the stuff I just talked about. Unfortunately, the husband in that family got diagnosed with a brain tumor. And they had to move away from North Carolina and move back to Utah, where they were from. And so she got displaced again because she couldn't move with them. And so I've also seen foster parents who lock the house. And I'm talking like lock down the house. Like we'll put locks on the refrigerator so that foster children cannot access food. And the only time that's almost never acceptable, the only time that I can work with that is if you have a child with a severe peanut allergy who you think is going to eat peanuts anyway, and you've had to lock up the peanuts for some sort of like literally protecting you from life and death.
Yeah, a safety issue, of course. Yeah.
Yes. The other thing is that sometimes foster children are really, really bad about gorging food. And they do that because they don't always know when they're going to get fed again. Because when in their homes, they didn't have that. So if they have an opportunity to eat, some of the time they'll eat until they make themselves sick. And so, there's a way to deal with that psychologically that's also not, well, we're going to lock the food up so you can't ever have a snack. Like food rationing. I don't like foster parents that do that as a general rule.
Yeah, there's an interesting way of managing people. This is true in the workplace and in politics and corporations and all this kind of stuff. With the idea is more control, and less autonomy, and less trust. Really, is what it comes down to. And I don't know if that works. I think there may be some people that respond to that type of management. I don't think many do. I certainly never would. It doesn't make sense to me. But I understand the instinct. It'll get away from me if I don't do that. That's the fear underneath it. Will it? I don't know. And what would happen if it did one time? What would that look like?
Right.
What could be explained? What could be remedied? I mean, there's so many choices people can make, and it's almost like, what if you made a little mistake in that area? So what?
Yeah.
But it really comes down to me, like underneath it is compassion and understanding and love. Really, that's really the underpinning of all this stuff. And if you're coming from that place, I think you can pretty much work with any situation to make it better.
Yeah.
Not necessarily fix it, to perfection, because I mean, who can do that? But And so, okay, now I want to get into this. We talked a little bit about this before we started, which was the intersection between that kind of advocacy and your law background. How do those things mix? And like you said to me, it's more of an overlap than most people would think. So can you explain that? Because I was having a little bit of trouble trying to figure it out myself, like how that works in conjunction with each other.
There's a hundred million ways that it connects with one another. One is that I am a trained advocate, which is helpful. You know, you can't get through law school without being really good at critical thinking and putting an argument together and then being able to have some positive delivery. So, in one respect, that's very helpful. I'm very good at advocating for the harm that I see being done to these kids because that is one of the benefits I have from law school. The other thing is that I'm able to discern the difference between a legal issue and a mental health issue, and everyone is not. Another thing that I will add, lawyers get almost no mental health training in law school. That is one of the great disservices that law schools are doing to society because the courthouse is 85% mental health triage. You know, nobody who is in there all the time because they're committing a crime every 30 minutes is there because they are in a healthy mental place. Same thing with high conflict divorce. The state of North Carolina has a statistic that says 85% of couples in a high conflict divorce either have a narcissist, a borderline personality disordered individual, or an addict, or something in the middle, or all of the above. That's why that's why it's worth it to them to spend, you know, $30,000 to $60,000 fighting each other instead of just figuring it out. They literally will spend a child's college education to fight one another. For what? You know, and they'll wind up with having nothing to show for it. They do it because they like it. And so they do. They like torturing each other legally.
Well, they get
and
something
so
out of it. Exactly what I was talking about. They do it because they're getting something.
They enjoy the aspect of tormenting their spouse. I also involuntarily commit folks. So, for instance, there's this famous case in Charlotte right now. I'm sure everyone's heard about it because, I mean, the president talked about it during the State of the Union. It's the Irina Zaruska case. She was the blonde Ukrainian girl who was murdered on a Charlotte train right up the street from me. Mm-hmm. And essentially what no one's talking about with that case is that her murderer has schizophrenia. And a few months before he killed her on the train, he called 911 40 times in a day and said, there's something in my body and it's making me do things and it's people are watching me. I mean, this man was like Halley's Comet. Like anyone with any mental health training whatsoever could tell you just from the phone calls he made alone, that's a schizophrenic. He needs medication. You know, the Invega shot is 93% effective for schizophrenics. Get him on some medication to help him with this problem. Instead of dispatching EMS and taking him to a mental health hospital, they charged him with abuse of a 911 call, which is what he had ultimately posted bond on. And so we do things like this where, again, like we're not educated about mental health. We don't know what we're looking at. And the reality of it is a lot of our schizophrenic populations can do exponentially better. I've had a client in the past who, when I walked in the room with them, they were literally painting the walls with their feces and were screaming religious statements, you know, all night long, just completely deteriorating. That person now works a full-time job at McDonald's and is perfectly fine because they're getting the Invega shot every 90 days. So all the voices that they've been hearing in their brain is calmed down and it's controlled. And to me, this stuff is common sense. But it appears to be something that our general population just is uneducated about. And that's why we're having a lot of the problems that we're having in this planet and in the country.
It's really a misunderstanding of what's actually happening inside somebody. And then, you know, there's a whole other sort of piece to it of, and I think this is sort of underdiagnosed and underreported and underserved, which is traumatic brain injury. I think a lot of people, especially when you look at little children who are maybe in an physically abusive homes, a lot of those kids not only have the emotional trauma, but they may actually have physical brain injuries.
Correct.
From being hit and thrown, and you know, and so, you know, I don't know if that is even a piece of it to get you know, brain scans and things, but that might be. I don't know.
It is. And also, too, even if you are not being physically injured yourself, so often that's what I hear in domestic violence cases. Well, we're beating each other, but we're not hurting the kid. Our kid is fine. You are damaging your child's brain by exposing them to that domestic violence. No child wants to watch their mother get beaten or abused. and you are actually damaging that child's brain. One of the most horrible child fatalities I've ever seen was a little boy who tried to stop his mother from getting beaten up by her boyfriend, and the boyfriend killed the child.
Yeah.
And ultimately, the mother survived. He went to prison for a very long time, as he should have. It does damage your child's brain. There are studies on living in a home with abject poverty or living in a home with domestic violence does absolutely impact your child, and it does change their brain development.
So a lot of this, the person that sees it the most would be a teacher, the regular teacher at a school, at a public school.
Our teachers are our first responders.
And they have an odd kind of way that they have to balance a certain amount of, they have to report if they think something is going on.
Yeah.
You can't really ask them to talk to the parents because they're not really trained in that.
No,
the administrators have to navigate this, and they don't want to probably because they're busy doing regular education administration stuff. Too. So how does that work? Are you called in on things like that?
It depends. As a general rule, what I say to teachers in that scenario is when in doubt, call DSS. My county actually created a special portal that enables teachers to just go online and file a report instead of having to sit on hold for 20 minutes or waiting on someone to call you back. They're able to just file one online, and then the social worker can contact them and follow up with them. But I always like to remind anyone, not just teachers, if you see something that you think there's something not right with this family, there's something not right with this kid, call Child Protective Services. Every county has a Child Protective Services line. Call them, because ultimately it's their job to figure out if there's something wrong or not. You do not have to disclose your identity, and the social workers are not supposed to tell the parents who called. So, if your child's got visible bruises and you as neighbor call in, well, that parents aren't going to know whether it was neighbor, teacher, doctor, whoever. They're not going to have any earthly idea. But you do need to report things like that. Like, I've seen daycare workers who have called in reports because a child comes to school every single day smelling like marijuana so bad that their clothes are making their teachers sick. When in doubt, file a report, because it's not up to you to figure out if something's going on. It's up to Child Protective Services. But I'll also say, if they get 20 calls that are garbage, one of the calls that they have is really something serious. And you never know when that phone call that you've picked up and made is actually going to save a child's life.
Yeah.
And my daughter will say that, getting into foster care was hard. It wasn't fun, but it was the best thing that could have happened to me. There are some parents that are just simply ill-equipped to be able to be parents.
Well, that's for sure. You don't need a license to have kids. You do to get married, but it's not a real tough test to pass.
That's exactly right.
It's a daunting thing. I would think sometimes you would feel a little overwhelmed with the volume and sadness of it all. But at the same time, there's a lot of good feeling when you can actually help somebody.
I have my daughter to look at every single day. And so whenever I start to feel overwhelmed or aggravated, I just remind myself that, I see every day what can happen when you do this right.
And I would think in most cases, done the right way, that the results would be very dramatically positive.
They have been in our case. And, and I always tell people too, there were times where I didn't know if she could do something or not. I had no idea. I had no clue if she would be able to finish high school. None. I absolutely didn't know if she would be able to go to college. Zero idea. But what I did know was that I was going to encourage her and tell her I thought she could. And every single time I told her I believed in her and I thought she could do something, she did it.
That's a real testament to you and to her. It really speaks to the communication part of human beings being the catalyst for people to do well in their life and succeed. And when I say succeed, I don't mean, monetary success and fame and fortune. I really mean succeed as a human being, to where they function in a way that there's happiness and health.
Correct.
Sometimes I look back at some of the troubled kids that I knew growing up that had problems that were maybe not treated so great by the adults and other kids even. And I didn't know this at the time. You just go, oh, that kid's kind of strange or
Right.
messed up. But then I look back and go, I wonder what was going on in their home, or what had happened to them before I met them,
Right.
or what they were going. It doesn't cross your mind when you're a kid because you don't know about it. But then I look back and I think, oh man, that kid must have been really suffering from, and fill in the blank.
Right.
And then sometimes you do find out later as an adult what that kid was going through.
That's right.
And you have a compassion for that situation.
Those children are essentially high investment, high reward. We have to spend a lot of time in them and investing in them and trying to help them out. But if we can get them redirected, they have a high reward for society. I mean, they wind up, again, those survival instincts are really good.
So you were saying that there's very little mental health training or education in the law profession.
Yes.
And there's and I don't know how much there is in teaching either. I don't know how much they go into that when somebody's getting a teaching degree. I don't know how much goes into that in the police department. I had a guy on here who was a policeman who was advocating for what you're talking about, and he was one of the few. He's got an organization, it's nationwide, where he tries to educate police on this kind of stuff, how to even talk to somebody who's creating a disturbance.
Right.
And
de-escalation.
De-escalation, that's the word, yes. And so I don't know what the percentages of people that understand these things that are advocating this way and the people that aren't. But it's worth, if anyone's listening to this and they're not sure, this is really an area I think that can be really vital in making this a better place to live, the world. I'm not talking about a specific city.
And when we start talking about all the jobs that we're hypothetically or allegedly about to lose because of AI, I'm 100% sure that jobs we are not going to lose is in the mental health field. We are never going to have a shortage of mental health jobs. And so redirecting into that as a career path is very good. We also need service providers like nurses and people who could administer things like the InVegas shot to schizophrenics and help them work out a life plan. Like there's all kinds of job opportunities in this space for the people. I don't want people to do it though, unless you really believe that you have the type of compassionate soul who is called to this and who can handle this. But there is a whole population of humans who deserve our dignity and our respect and our compassion. And those are jobs that AI is not going to be able to replace.
It may actually create more mental health issues.
It sure might. It sure might. Your girlfriend does not need to be AI.
Yeah. Well, I'm just thinking about, you've got all these now unemployed people. That's a recipe for lots of problems when you have masses of people that can't get work and support themselves.
For sure.
Or having to live on minimal income. So that's going to be some pretty negative fallout to that stuff. That seems very obvious to me. I don't know what the positive side is. Generally, when a new technology comes, people are afraid of something being lost, but there's always been something to replace it.
Right.
But I'm not seeing that with AI.
Nope. Me either.
So,
all I can tell you is you will definitely find a job in mental health. So if that's something you're interested in doing, by all means, if you're a young person or a person interested in pursuing a second career, definitely look into your requirements for what you would want to do.
If everything begins with a thought, every action, you have to have a thought first. The way you feel starts with a thought. So if you're involved in something which encourages people to have certain types of thoughts that are productive and positive and emotionally grounded, you're going to have a happier world.
Absolutely.
And so it makes a lot of sense. Now, are you a psychologist also? Is that what you are?
No. So I have a JD and then I have a master's in clinical mental health, but then I'm a licensed clinical mental health therapist.
Okay.
LCMHC. It's way too many letters. It's very confusing. But there's all kinds of things, and like mental health is like alphabet soup. Like there are marriage and family
Yeah.
therapists, there are licensed substance abuse counselors, there's licensed clinical social workers. Some states call what I am an LPC, a licensed professional counselor, but there's all kinds of stuff in this space where someone could get a really decent job.
How much schooling is that? Just
Master's degree. So 4 year
okay.
degree and then a master's degree. But then after the master's degree, you have to do 2,000 hours of supervised counseling. So you have to be supervised by a licensed therapist.
Okay. And you have to be in counseling too as part of that?
What do you mean?
Well, be in therapy of some type
Oh,
yourself.
no, you don't. But you do have to meet with your supervisor for 1 hour for every, in North Carolina, for 1 hour for every 40 hours of therapy you
Okay.
perform. And
Hmm.
that's mainly just to stop you from doing things like, if I'm counseling somebody and she's describing a problem and it sounds like an experience I've had before, it's a way to help me make sure that like my stuff is my stuff and her stuff is
Yeah.
her stuff. Because we don't want to have countertransference messing up our clients.
Right. I mean, you're really paying for or if you're not paying, same thing. You want objectivity. You don't want
Yes.
something that's
Right.
somebody else getting all over your thing.
Right. We are giving you an hour that is about you. It's not about us. It's not about what we think, or it's about you. There are psychoeducational components. Like sometimes someone will describe something to me and I find myself giving a book report on an academic journal that I read about what someone's describing. But some of the time it's just helping reframe the way that they think, or helping people kind of get rid of having ruminating thoughts. I had a young man once, I like this guy a lot. And he was thinking his girlfriend had broken his heart. He was devastated. He was thinking about this woman all day. Like every 6 minutes, he was thinking about this woman. So I made him like actually like get a post-it note and like a golf pencil and carry it around. Every time he thought about this girl, I made him put a note as to how many times he thought about her a day. And when he was done, he was like, oh my gosh. He was like, I'm literally thinking about this woman like 12 times an hour. He was like, I didn't think about her that much when I was dating her. And I was like, should you be thinking about anything that much? And he was like, absolutely not. And that was one of the things that we did together to kind of help him like redirect his thoughts and come up with other things to do and to think about. So it's a lot of like helping people, honoring that you're sad and you're grieving, but also kind of helping people move on to the next stage.
So that's a whole other issue then. That's not about the other person. It's about the person themselves. Like what is that triggering? What kind of emptiness or feeling of
Right.
abandonment or whatever that thing might be? I totally get that. I mean,
Yes.
it makes sense, especially when you hear about teenagers after breakups. You really hear that like crazy,
Right.
especially if it's their first
Right.
love.
But
You're just
you're
like, my insides have been kicked out. There's nothing left for me.
right, exactly. And they've got to be walked through that. They've got to have those, like, again, emotional regulation and the emotional maturity to handle that.
It's not easy being human. It's just kind of a constant predicament, isn't it?
Absolutely, it sure is.
Now you're coming out with a book. This is what I'm excited about. Let's
Yes,
talk about your book because we want people to read this book and to know about it. When is it? First of all, tell me when it's coming out and tell me the title.
so it is out. It
Oh, it's
actually
out. Okay, good.
it is out. It actually just came out last Friday, which depending on when this airs, it came out at the end of February, and it is called Tumbleweeds. And it's specifically called Tumbleweeds: How to Be an Advocate for Your Children and Yourself in a Failing System. And it's basically a bunch of stories. Like it's stories about my kids and my daughter and the things that we went through. But in those stories, I'm also trying to tell people about the things that I've learned. So there's a lot of conversation about IEPs. There's a lot of conversation about medical advocacy. It's a lot of law, a lot of mental health, a little bit of everything, but it's mostly just the story of my personal experience. And I'm really hoping that it's helpful for people.
Well, I've always found when I've read personal experiences to be the most valuable thing in learning about anything. It's kind of like it's like listening to music as opposed to learning music theory. It's a huge difference.
Yep.
And so, this is listening to the music of what happened. And
Yeah.
I think that there's a heart connection to it, as well as sort of a practical, I know what that is, or I've seen that, or I know somebody that went through that. Then you can kind of have something to grab onto rather than a theory.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a great way to describe it, actually.
You can have that as a
I'm totally stealing it, Bob.
take it. Anything I say here. And by the way, everything on me is for sale. If you like the shirt, I'll ship it to you.
Great. Thank you.
And now, is there a website for the book, or for you, or both?
Yeah.
Or yeah.
Yeah.
Let's say what that is.
So paulayost.com.
Okay.
And then you can also find me on Facebook or Instagram at Paula J. Yost, author.
Wonderful. Paula Yost. Great name. I love that last name.
Thank you.
I don't know any Yosts.
It's fairly popular in like the part of the South where I'm from. So
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll have to visit the South and see if that's true. It's been a long time.
Well, let me know. I'll take you to lunch.
Oh, how sweet. Well, when I get to Asheville to see my buddy, I'll have to send you a message.
That'd be great. I love Asheville.
Yeah. And I'm coming, if I do make it there, it will be at a certain time of year when there's no floods.
That's right. That's right. We don't want to ever, well, hopefully that will never happen again.
Yeah.
That was a rare, horrible experience for everyone.
It sounded awful. I was talking to my friend in Asheville when that was going on, and he goes, it's Armageddon, man. It's just like everything's washing away, and the power, it sounded horrible. And then we had the fires right after that.
Yeah, it was horrible.
Yeah. So it's, nature's powerful, very humbling.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, I want to thank you for your wonderful talk today, but also for your advocacy and your heart. That's really what I want to thank you for. It's always a privilege to meet somebody who's dedicated to kindness and compassion, and you are certainly one of those people. So thank you for being you.
Thanks, Bob. I appreciate that. I have enjoyed being on the show. Thank you for having me.
Much appreciation for you folks listening to The Exploding Human. The website is theexplodinghuman.com. You can also listen on YouTube. That is The Exploding Human with Bob Nickman. Once again, I want to thank Paula Yost for being on the show. Have a fantastic day. Thank you.